Anton, you like mustard, right?
Yeah, I'm a mustard guy.
I feel like I've seen mustard on your shirts before.
That's embarrassing.
Do you want to know how to get mustard out of your shirt?
Yeah. Does it work for stadium mustard too, do you think?
I think so. So here's what I learned today. Turmeric is what makes mustard such a pain of a stain. Its color is often embedded inside a garment's fibers. Before laundering, you may have to repeat these steps. First, remove as much of the mustard as possible, scraping it off with a butter knife. Do you have a butter knife?
I do. I have
Great.
a few.
Second, pour hot water through the stain. I'd suggest using a tea kettle. Do you have a tea kettle?
Yes, I have that.
Great, you're doing great so far. Third, scrub the stain with laundry soap and a brush. Do you have those things?
Yeah, I have a brush.
And last, dip the stain into a solution of bleach alternative and water, then launder.
Okay. That sounds doable.
Yeah.
Do you have anything for like chain grease for like my bicycle?
I could tell you about how to get grease out of your clothes, but I don't know, maybe we should open the show. I think we're filming.
Yeah, probably should.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to All Things Green. I'm Shelby, here with my co-host Anton to discuss a variety of topics from across the sustainability and laundry universe. Anton, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. I'm much smarter in my laundry trivia now.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this book today. It's called Laundry Love by Patric Richardson with Karin B. Miller. Shout out to Karin. Because I love this book for all sorts of reasons. I thought it was very charming. When someone recommended that I read a book about laundry, I have to be honest, I was like, I'm probably not going to spend my free time on that. But then I was moving, I had a really long drive, and so I got the audiobook version and thought, maybe I'll learn something. And actually, it was so cute and charming and funny. Patric Richardson is the laundry evangelist. He's so good at making sure that your clothes stay nice for as long as they possibly can.
Very sustainable.
Very sustainable, which is why we're here. Because when I started thinking about how much I love this book, I was referencing it the other day to figure out how to get a ketchup stain out of something. It is baseball season after all. And then I thought, well, all of this is about how to do your laundry with more love for the planet. So I thought maybe we could talk about laundry today. Does that sound good?
That sounds amazing.
Okay.
Let's talk about laundry.
Laundry is one of my favorite chores, actually. There's not a lot of chores I would say that about, but how do you rank laundry on the scale of, doing dishes to doing yard work? Where does that sit for you?
I mean, laundry's honestly up there. It's pretty easy to throw things in like the wash. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Modern technology, we love
Yeah.
to see it. That said, laundry, the way that I learned to do it growing up, isn't exactly the kindest to the environment. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how I learned to do it, and that's probably really similar to how a lot of people learn to do it, what I'm doing now, and then other things that we could all be doing to make our laundry more sustainable. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll start by telling you how I learned to do laundry. You can tell me if any of this resonates with you. Almost everything went on hot because we needed to kill the bugs, aka
Okay.
bacteria.
Gotcha.
Did you guys wash things on hot?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
It was mostly the whites though, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Like, oh, we want to keep them nice and white. We'll talk more later about how there
Okay.
are other ways to do that. But yeah, we always did like intimates, towels, the kind of thing that you'd associate with maybe a little more grime on hot.
Gotcha.
Also, everything I had went in the dryer. Did you use your dryer growing up?
Yeah, but my grandma next door, she actually still hangs her laundry
On like a line?
on a line outside.
I love the look of that too.
Yeah, I do too, personally.
Yeah.
I got to get a laundry line this summer.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I also used a lot of different chemicals. So our laundry detergent had all these scents in it, and then I also used
Yeah.
fabric softener and all sorts of stuff. Does all that kind of resonate with what you learned too?
Yeah, kind of. My parents would shell out for like the laundry detergents and stuff. They actually transferred to like I don't know, what is it, Zote or something like that? Like
Yeah, Zotes.
Yeah, they did that for a while, but then they were like, it's too much of a pain in the ass, so they switched
Yeah.
back to the laundry detergent.
Well, those are all things that I used to do that I know that my mom still does, but I learned a lot from this book and also from all sorts of other sources. A couple of things were I linked a National Geographic article on ways to do your laundry in a more environmentally friendly way. Also, I learned a lot on YouTube, so especially this woman from a channel called My Green Closet, who was really good at talking about why your clothes exist the way that they do, the fabric content, etc. So I learned better ways to do my laundry, both for my clothes and for the planet. The biggest thing is just that I wear my clothes for a lot longer before I wash them. we work in pretty close quarters. Have you ever thought to yourself, maybe this is the wrong question to ask, because what if I get an answer I don't like? But have you ever thought about, like, wow, Shelby, your clothes look or smell dirty?
No, never.
First of all, thank God.
Yeah. Always a very pleasant omen coming from Shelby and her clothing.
An omen, that's good. Well, thank you for saying that. I guess I was fishing for that compliment a little bit. But yeah, I wear things a lot before I launder them. And it depends on what you're using the clothes for, what kind of content they have, fabric content. So a synthetic fabric typically is going to hold on to oils and grime more than a natural fabric.
Interesting.
And so those do need to be laundered more often, especially things like gym wear with all of those synthetic materials. You probably wash those pretty much every time you wear them. But this wool cardigan, I don't know if I've ever washed it, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
I mostly wear it layered over other things, so it's not making a lot of direct contact with my skin, and it's a natural fiber. So if it gets a little bit just musty, I can sort of put it up, hang it, spray it with a little vodka, because that helps take care of any bacteria.
Okay, good
and
to
it's
know.
good as new without having to put it in the wash. And
I actually have a wool anecdote.
yeah, tell me all about it.
My mother brought me home some wool socks from Croatia. They were actually like, it was wool harvested from the village where my grandmother was from and spun into material and used as socks. I still haven't washed those socks. Now, granted, I will wear socks underneath these socks because wool socks, you know, it's only for the winter time. But like, yeah, trying to keep that same Croatia grit on there. Can't put
Absolutely.
it through the wash.
Listen, my brain does go somewhere different when you say socks versus sweaters, but I'm not going to judge it. I've never thought, wow, you smell like a dirty wool sock. So,
You know, maybe I should try spraying it with vodka or something though,
Yeah.
because I don't know.
it really can.
Otherwise, maybe it's, I don't know. I don't think my feet are that ridden with bacteria.
I think you're probably doing okay. It's mostly like you would notice if it was getting dirty because it's going to have an odor, whether it's a sock or not. So one big step that I took was to just wear my clothes more often. And now that does come with the question of, where do your clothes go when you've already worn them, but they're not really dirty enough to be laundered? First of all, nothing says you can't put them back in your closet. So a lot of times with things like jeans that are really hardy materials, I just put them right back in the same old pile. I don't need to separate them into ones that have never been worn and ones that have been worn once or twice. They're not going to make other clothes dirty by going back in. Once they get dirty enough to be washed, they go in the wash. I do have a few things that I separate, like if I've worked out and I think, well, that was only 20 minutes, I could probably wear those leggings again, but maybe I sweat in those. I don't want my drawer to start to smell like that. Then I can put it somewhere else to just let it air out so I get a little bit more use out of that.
Yeah.
Do you do any of that kind of stuff?
I hardly wash my jeans. Like
Yeah.
they go through a lot of abuse before they hit the washing machine.
They don't really need it. They're not, especially like those 100% cotton kind of stiff jeans. Like they don't really need to be laundered all that often. So that was a big change for me, just wearing things more often before I wash them. But also when I wash my clothes, I wash them all on cold now. Where I grew up, we washed a lot of things on hot, but washing things on hot actually releases a lot of carbon dioxide because you are using energy to heat up that water. Your water heater is getting so hot to be able to run a load like that. So actually, a statistic I found said you can save 800 pounds of carbon dioxide each year by making just 4 out of 5 loads cold water instead of hot water. And so that's a lot of carbon dioxide to not put out into the world just by washing your clothes in cold. There are some benefits to washing clothes in hot. If it's like really soiled, it can help kill bacteria, but most of your clothes don't really need to be washed that way. So now I wash basically everything on cold. It's also better for your clothes. A lot of us wear synthetic materials. Most of our clothes have some kind of synthetic material in it, unless you're really specifically looking for natural fibers. And those materials tend to break down in hot water. And that's bad for the lifespan of the clothes, and it also releases microplastics into the water.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so not good. Only use hot when you really need to sanitize something. And then we also talked about detergents. You said your family transitioned into using something besides traditional detergent.
For a little bit, yeah.
For a little bit. Did you grow up using fabric softener?
Yeah, my parents did.
Yeah, I did too, and I thought that you needed it. Okay. Somehow I thought that if I didn't use fabric softener, my clothes would be ruined. But then I learned that actually fabric softener seeps into your clothes and it basically stays there and it changes the texture. They say it's softener and it can make your clothes have this softer texture, but that's just because it's living in the materials.
That's gross.
It is gross and it's really hard to wash out. It's chemicals that aren't necessarily great for our environment. So I stopped using fabric softener because ultimately the goal of fabric softener is to make sure that your clothes don't get too sort of like stiff when they're in the dryer. But I also stopped putting things in the dryer. And so now everything hang dries and I don't feel the need to have a fabric softener. Anything that does go in the dryer, which for me is mostly just towels, because if they don't go in the dryer, they take forever to dry on the line and they don't tend to be as soft.
Yeah.
I use these little dryer buddies. Have you heard of those?
Are they like the little yarn balls or whatever?
Yeah, you can use yarn balls. Mine are like kind of cuter.
Okay.
They're like,
Ouch.
yarn balls are probably better ultimately, but I'm going to use what I have because I have them. Mine are little plastic cacti, that have all these little pokies. And so they kind of just tumble around so that it reduces that static electricity in your dryer and keeps your clothes separated so they dry quickly. But a yarn ball does the same thing. It just absorbs, a wool ball, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Absorbs some of that moisture and tumbles around. So those are some of the things that I've made changes on, but there are other things you can do. You can also just switch to like a fragrance-free detergent, or you can switch to a low to no plastic detergent, something like Lazy Coconuts and Earth Breeze. Those are two companies that make eco-friendly strips that come in cardboard packaging, so you don't have those big bulky detergents. And we talked about microplastics. You can also use things like microplastic filters, or there's this bag called the Guppy Friend, where you can put all of your synthetic materials in the bag, and it'll help collect all those microplastics.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that way we're not putting out things into the environment that really we don't want to eat later because it's all going into our water.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to try and cut down on plastics in my household. Right now we have like that big jug of Tide, that plastic jug. And yeah, I got to try that Lazy Coconut, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Hashtag not sponsored. Hashtag would be sponsored. I was curious, I've told you a lot about what I've changed up to make my laundry work for me and hopefully work a little better for the planet. It's not perfect, but is there anything that you're doing that maybe is different or improved over how you learned to do it?
Yeah, honestly, I stopped buying fabric softener, not really for the environment, but just because I was spending extra money on something I didn't really care for. So, I mean, that was an important change. Also, just running clothes on cold all the time. Like, I don't want to pay for the hot water, that just makes my gas bill go up. So economically, I guess I made some decisions that I didn't know would affect the environment, but
yeah. And you said you want to get a laundry line. Are you drying your clothes in the dryer now, or are you putting them up on something else?
Yeah, right now they're all going in the
dryer.
In the dryer. That's something I was like actually thinking about it on the way over. I threw a load in right before I biked over here, and I was like, it's really nice out. I think the clothes would be happier outside too.
Yeah, and they get that fresh air smell. Yeah. Right now, I don't have a yard to be able to put my clothes on a line, but I hang dry everything on just like a little rack that I got online. And we have 2 of them. I live in a 2-person household, and that's normally enough for a week's worth of laundry. And it works really well. I am guilty. I said I like doing laundry, don't like putting laundry away. So I am guilty of leaving my laundry hanger full of clothes basically until the next time I need to hang laundry on it. But listen, it forces me to do that extra step of the chore. I also really quickly, before we move on, just want to point out that a lot of things we talked about, these adaptations, it really depends on your life situation, what's going to work for you. Right now, I have laundry in my unit in my apartment, and it makes it a lot easier to have some things go in the dryer and some things come home wet. When I used to go to a laundromat, it was terrible to have to take my wet clothes home and then try to hang dry them and then go back to get the clothes that were in the dryer, the towel. And so I kind of just wasn't able to make that work. And so, as always, we're not here to tell you that if you're not doing all these things, you're not doing enough. Any of these steps are reducing the emissions, reducing the amount of chemicals and microplastics we're putting into the world. So, do what works for you, but these are just some ideas.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about some microplastics in our next segment.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So, Shelby, everybody knows that those single-use water bottles aren't great for the environment. Environmentalists are constantly preaching about, have that water bottle that you just fill up over and over again, right?
Like this?
Yeah. Or like this Terry mug that I use week after week.
Yeah, something reusable, something that you're not going to throw away right afterwards.
But Riverkeeper, a New York clean water advocacy organization, they actually created a campaign to convince people to drink tap water instead of bottled water. And I wanted to put it out there. A lot of people don't know that plastic water bottles come from the oil and gas industry in so many ways.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So plastics are petrochemicals. Petrochemicals, they come from refining crude oil and sending it to a cracker plant. And it's not a cracker plant like Ritz crackers or something like that.
Darn it.
I know. Yeah, a cracker plant is a plant that takes that oil and they basically expose it to really high heats, and it kind of explodes into different pellets of plastic, which then they use fossil fuels to ship all around the world to make plastic products.
Yeah, that doesn't sound a very pleasant process. So
No.
every time I'm drinking out of a plastic water bottle, I'm drinking out of the remains of oil and gas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's honestly not that healthy. We know that plastic water bottles, they of course contribute to climate change through carbon emissions and things like that. But
And just pollution. I mean, seeing them in the ocean.
oh yeah,
Oh,
I mean
God.
the caps and the water bottles, and it's not going to break down for like another who knows how long. So
Exactly. But I have to say, something that I see is that people who are trying to make a good choice and avoid buying plastic water bottles will often buy things like our little reusable mugs,
yeah,
but they buy whichever one is cool now.
yeah, exactly.
So-
like every 6 months or something, they're just
Yes.
buying something new. Yeah,
When I was in college, it was cool to have an Nalgene, and then it was cool to have some Yeti, and then it was cool to have those, oh God, those really, really expensive ones that were like insulated. You know what I'm talking about? And now it's those big Stanley cups that you see everyone wandering around with. Like, that's fine, but just know that probably if you did the life cycle analysis on making a new one of these, it's going to be worse than just one plastic water bottle. Like,
yeah.
obviously we're encouraging getting away from plastic water bottles, but we're still over consuming
Yeah.
if you have a ton
Use
of
your
these.
stuff, you know.
Use your stuff.
Use your stuff.
Exactly. If you have a whole cabinet full of different mugs and travel water bottles for, 10 for every one person in your family, maybe like use those before you get another one. I say that knowing that this one's only about a year old, but it was a gift, and it's because I moved to Cleveland.
Yeah, it is a very cool mug. What
Thank
is that?
you.
That's the Guardians.
It's the Guardians,
Yeah,
the
that is
Guardians
pretty
of
cool.
traffic
Cleveland,
from
Ohio.
Cleveland, and
Well, the water bottles, it is also nice to have a reusable water bottle because you're going to get a lot of microplastics that actually leach into your drinking water, the water bottle. We talked about PFAS before in a previous episode. Some water bottle companies, they have water bottles littered with that PFAS in them already. Like you buy it from the store, it already has PFAS.
yeah.
So some people think that drinking tap is maybe not great. It's contaminated. Well, your water bottles might be contaminated also.
Which is so tough
Yeah.
because really there are places where tap water is a concern. Even here in Cleveland,
Yeah.
there are places where we see high levels of lead in water. And so I get it that someone might say, I don't have trust here. We've seen what happened in Flint. We're not always taking care of our people and their water. I'm going to buy a water bottle where I know what's in it instead of drinking out of the tap. But it sounds like we're kind of giving people a double-edged sword. I think we also probably should point out that because there are sometimes real concerns about what's in tap water, yes, you can get a water filter. I have a water filter so that I can drink all the tap water I want, and it's
Yeah.
going to filter out lead and other particulate matter. But not everybody can afford a water filter. They're not that cheap. And so
Yeah.
I can see why a family might say, a low-income family might say, well, I don't trust the tap water, and for $10 I can get a bunch of plastic water bottles
Yeah.
versus spending $80 on a filter. So again, same with the laundry thing. It's
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to economics.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool to see some type of nonprofit or organization kind of step up and kind of be a stopgap, get a grant to maybe install water filters in people's homes. We can't fix the infrastructure overnight, but that water filter is still going to be helpful even after the infrastructure's fixed.
That's true. I really like that idea.
Going in and putting in some water filters in people's homes who need it, so they're not getting poisoned or
Yeah,
things like that.
listen up, nonprofit professionals. We've got an idea for you.
Yeah, go figure this one out for me. So, yeah, I mean, A lot of these plastic water bottles, from cradle to grave, it's really not great for people or the environment. You're kind of patronizing the oil and gas industry indirectly with these single-use plastics, but also just that litter. Even if they get incinerated, we've talked about pyrolysis before. You're going to get these nasty emissions in low-income communities when they're incinerating water bottles. So
Yeah, definitely.
I'm so sorry to bring the mood down. I mean, plastic water bottles aren't great, but we could talk about something happier. I know that there's more laundry to discuss.
I know. Listen, we did the whole laundry thing, and that's helping us take care of the environment and our clothes. But that brings me to thinking about our clothes. So let's go there. I know
Yeah.
you're a man of fashion.
Am I?
Well, we're working on it.
Thanks.
I wanted to talk about the sustainable fashion pipeline because ultimately this is something that I'm really interested in as a person who really likes clothes and style and expressing myself that way. And this is probably one of the biggest traps that I fall into as someone who's interested in the environment is going, I can just keep shopping if I just buy from the right places. And there's probably better ways for me to do this. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the impacts of the fashion industry on environmental issues and also human rights, and then some of the tactics that people may take to push back against the status quo. Sound okay?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to start with a few disturbing statistics. So first of all, less than 1% of clothing materials are ever recycled. It's a pretty small number. That
Yeah.
means that every year the fashion industry throws out about 92 million tons of waste.
Holy Moses.
It also consumes trillions of liters of water to be able to wash and treat and color and dye clothes. And all of those things leach microplastics back into that water supply.
Did you say 92 million tons?
92 million tons of waste,
Waste.
of like wasted fibers
Yeah.
or other pieces of that economy.
I mean, I can't even imagine what 92 million tons looks like.
It's enormous. And then also, yeah, the trillions of liters of water that it
Yeah.
takes to prepare, treat, clean all of those clothes before
Yeah.
they go out to you. We do see, we said only about 1% of clothing is ever recycled, but a lot more of clothing is donated. But the hard part with that is that very little of what is donated is actually resold in stores. So some of that becomes fabric waste, and some of it is just shipped off in bulk to far-flung corners of the US, places that probably still don't want all of our fast fashion, terrible quality, style forward and not function forward clothing. They don't really need those clothes, but what else are you going to do with it? So we are essentially in this cycle of more. We're buying more clothes than our grandparents ever did, way more,
Yeah.
and then also not keeping it for very long. And that's partially because clothes are not really built to last in most traditional accessible stores. Do you ever find this when you're buying something new, thinking like, I'm going to wash this, it's going to disintegrate?
Yeah, I shopped at like H&M for a little bit there,
Yeah.
right? They're like cheap clothing
Yes,
that like just feels like it's like paper thin.
exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But you can get all the latest styles
Yeah.
that came out yesterday, today, and look the part. And that really appeals to people
Yeah.
because we live in a society where you want to fit in and you want to appear that you're keeping up.
Right.
So it can be really tough for people to understand the impact when it's so easy and accessible. It's cheap. I can wear it for a few days and ultimately it didn't cost me that much. But
Right.
it cost the world a lot. And that's not even talking about the human impact. So garment workers are historically extremely exploited.
Yeah.
So there are millions of garment workers worldwide. Most of those garment workers are in Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. But then they're selling those clothes in the US, Canada, Western Europe, Japan, and Australia, more wealthy countries that are consuming high volumes.
Yeah.
So why are they made in those parts of the world? Because of lax labor laws and lower costs. Even when you think about having to transport buttons from one country to another country that's going to sew them on, to another country that's going to treat and process and dye it. I mean, it's going all over the world
Yeah.
for one t-shirt.
I never even thought about that.
It's still cheaper for most companies to do that because we're exploiting workers.
Yeah.
Some of the complaints from Human Rights Watch against garment workers, complaints that garment workers have,
Yeah.
are firing pregnant workers, denying maternity leave, union busting, forced overtime, sometimes up to 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, sexual harassment and abuse, wage theft, or just extremely low wages, sometimes even breaking laws, child labor, and then, of course, unhealthy work environments, both in terms of the chemicals that workers are exposed to and skirted building codes, which can mean that people are trapped in buildings when those buildings burn, or they are in buildings that don't have enough light or circulation.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be. And a lot of us kind of do know this to some extent.
Yeah.
But when you're at H&M, is that what you're thinking about? Probably not.
No.
Yeah. So that's the downside. But there are things that we can do. In our economy and finance episode, you talked about our buying power as consumers, right?
Right. Yeah.
You were talking about buying local veggies, trying to support local economies. Sometimes that's hard with clothing because you can't really grow a shirt in your backyard in the same way you might be able to grow a tomato. And clothing takes a lot of work to produce. And so it's not as easy to find a somewhat equivalent in cost local shirt as it might be to find a local potato. But there are things we can do as consumers, help us unlearn the ease of access to some of these cheap, fast fashion clothes to do other things. And I'm mostly doing this to remind myself when I think about buying the next cute thing that this is the alternatives. So none of these are necessarily right or wrong or better than the others, but I just wanted to talk about options. So let's start with thinking about the capsule wardrobe. Have you heard this term?
I've heard of the capsule wardrobe.
Do you feel like you have a capsule wardrobe?
I feel like I have a pretty small wardrobe. I don't know if it's a capsule wardrobe. I was just talking to one of our producers saying, I think I might have to go thrifting to get a few more outfits so it's not the same 5 outfits over and over again.
Well, maybe we should make a stand and just wear the same stuff over and over again. But, thrifting's a real option. Let's start with capsule wardrobing and go to thrifting. They can go hand in hand. So for anyone who doesn't know, capsule wardrobes are essentially like a really small, curated, seasonal wardrobe. So the idea, some people will put specific numbers to it, like 36 items for your season, and it's mostly basics with a few pops here and there of personality, things that can really be worn all together, that are pretty functional and efficient. And the idea is that during that season, you don't shop for anything else, you just wear what's in your capsule wardrobe, and you switch it out season by season, identifying gaps. So maybe last year you realized you needed some kind of light jacket, and so for your next season, you could buy that. So the idea, I think, is sound. It's saying you don't need all this variety. No one really cares. You can express yourself with small amounts of things. You can invest in nice pieces that will last you season after season. I think where sometimes we get in trouble with the capsule wardrobes is like, it should be perfect. Oh, get your perfect. It has to be 36 items. And then you get rid of stuff because you want to reach that goal.
And then you buy more stuff.
And you buy more stuff so that you have the right black t-shirt because now everything needs to match. And so that's not to say like, don't do it. Just be mindful of like, don't get rid of stuff just to get rid of it if it's still functional for you. And if you want to pursue a capsule wardrobe, maybe let it take its time instead of getting rid of everything you have and starting over so that it can be perfect. Trends are going to keep coming and going, and you're probably never going to feel like you have the perfect wardrobe. So that's an option. But there's, I think, other better options. One of those you already mentioned, which is thrifting. Tell me about thrifting. Are you like an in-store thrifter? Are you thrifting online?
I'm an in-store thrifter. I go to Value World in Lakewood. They have a lot of good stuff there. I don't have anything that I'm wearing right now that is thrifted from there.
But your mug is thrifted.
My mug is thrifted.
That's right.
The Terry mug. I really like thrifting. I think it's fun. You find like those really unique pieces. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult to do a capsule wardrobe. What do you think?
I think it's probably more difficult because most of the time the idea of the capsule wardrobe is to like find the perfect thing instead of like the quirky thing.
Yeah.
And I do think we can still overconsume when we're thrifting.
Oh, yeah.
But, and you can also like buy things that are still made out of these synthetic materials that then leach microplastics into the world. So using like the guppy bags or filters we talked about earlier are still a good idea. But still, you're giving something a second life. You're preventing it from going straight into the landfill. It might go there eventually because we know that it's really hard to recycle textiles, especially synthetic ones. But I think it's a good option, and it's kind of fun, like you said.
Yeah, it's like a great afternoon hang with friends or something like that.
Totally. And, we said it might be harder to do the capsule thing. I think that's especially true if you're going thrifting in real life. To me, that feels like just luck, what you're going to find that day. But if you do want something more specific, there are also websites like Poshmark, ThredUp. Those websites, people can sell their clothes, or even like companies will send their excess clothes there to be resold at lower secondhand prices. So there you can type in your size, the materials you like, even brands, and get something that's really high quality, a lot of times new. I buy a lot of things online from Poshmark or ThredUp when I want something kind of specific and don't want to buy it new. You can still get it at good prices.
That makes sense. Do you think I could find like a red Adidas jumpsuit?
Absolutely.
Or not a jumpsuit, tracksuit.
Yeah.
Tracksuit.
I think we should look as soon as we finish recording.
Yeah.
And then I think you should wear it when you get it next week.
That's important to me. I wanted to like embrace my Slavic, upbringing.
Absolutely.
And there's no better way to do it than a tracksuit.
We'll work on that. When we have other options here besides thrifting, you can also buy from more eco-friendly brands. Now, I want to kind of warn people about this one because of ding, 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 greenwashing. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
How often have you been shopping and every website is like, we're eco-friendly?
Yeah, every website now, every one of them. I'm like, oh, great. If everybody's 100% eco-friendly, then we have nothing to worry about, right?
Absolutely. But this is the thing I said. This is the trap I fall
Right.
into. Oh, I can buy that because it's eco-friendly, when really maybe I don't need another thing in the first place, and it's still buying something new. So it's not a bad thing. If you need something new, great. Go use something like, there's a website called Good On You that helps you kind of wade through the greenwashing and see who's really doing a good job, so you can find the best option for the thing that you need. But also, just think about whether we need the things in the first place. Again, I'm talking to myself here. Something I've been considering, and especially you mentioned that we are trying to get dressed every week to be on camera, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to run out of stuff, but I don't want to buy a bunch of stuff. Have you ever thought about renting?
I've never thought about renting.
Did you ever have to rent like a tux or a suit for prom or a dance or anything like that?
I've never actually had to. I guess I've heard of like renting wedding dresses, but not like actually like day-to-day wear.
Yeah, so there are websites like Newly and Rent the Runway, say that 5 times fast, that you can rent clothes, and they'll send you boxes every month or however cadence you want to receive those clothes. So that's something that I have been considering, so that I get a new batch of things that feel kind of like shopping. But ultimately, I just get to send it back, and I'm not sending it back to be discarded. I'm sending it back for someone else to wear. So that can be an option. They're not as affordable as I thought they might be, but you are still getting lots of items. And even when I buy something new, sometimes I only wear it a few times before I realize, oh, well, that season is over and now I can't wear that dress anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good option. You can also learn to sew your own clothes. Have you ever tried anything?
No.
Me neither. I'd love to. This, I think, is the closest to that agriculture episode where we talked about being able to just garden in your backyard. Listen, we're asking people to do a lot of things here.
Yeah.
You need to learn to garden. You also need to learn to sew. You also need to do your laundry differently. One step at a time, guys.
Right, exactly.
Do the things that spark joy. But if you're interested in clothing like I am, and you want something that you could do with your hands that's not just watching TV or sitting on your phone, maybe you could learn. There are a ton of resources online, and I know that my library actually rents out or allows people to borrow sewing machines. So there are some
That's
low
really cool.
barrier to entry ways to get started. Now, you don't make your own clothes, but have you ever tried to repair them?
I usually send those pieces of clothing to my mother to get repaired.
Listen, moms are great for that.
Moms are great.
My mom absolutely would hem my pants and things like that.
Yeah.
But even if you don't know how to do it, again, you could learn. We do these Fix It Cleveland workshops here in Northeast Ohio where anyone can show up and say, I need help learning how to darn my socks. So you could gain those skills. You could give it to your mom if your mom is good at sewing and you have one around. But you can also take it to a tailor and pay someone for those skills. Actually, the shirt that I'm wearing now, I've had this shirt probably for 7 or 8 years. I bought it when I worked at a fast fashion company. And it just didn't fit right. And so I thought about getting rid of it. How hard would it be to replace essentially a simple patterned tank top? but I had this kind of thing in mind. And I thought, well, I like a lot of things about this. I think it's a relatively high quality piece. And so I went and had them adjust the strap so that it fit me better. And now I wear it all the time.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's an option. Everything we've talked about are very much things you can do with your lifestyle. But I also want to pitch just one more thing.
Okay.
Policy change.
Hey.
The EU, the European Union, actually has recommended some policy changes that would make it a requirement for garment companies to have a certain amount of the materials be recycled. So there are some pushes here and there to change the way that we consume and create clothing. There's also lots of pushes on just taking care of garment workers from that perspective. I do think that we as consumers have a responsibility here to reduce the demand and make better choices, but we're still living in systems, so policies can help us do that.
That sounds awesome. I love the idea of bringing it back to policy. I think that's the way that things get done most often.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, Anton, thanks so much for talking all things green with me today.
My pleasure.
You want to tell everybody how they can keep up to date with us?
Yes, I do. If you'd like to stay connected to us, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at One Planet Media. That's ONE1. And if you'd like to rewatch full episodes, check out our YouTube channel, All Things Green Show. You can find all of our sources from today's episode in the show notes.
We'll be back the same time next week to bring you more news. Thank you for being a part of the global sustainability movement.